Hello everybody, my name's Snow. I run a company in Sydney called Holly. We're Sydney's first independent digital media agency, and we live in the space between art and digital. We've been pioneering the use of new technologies to drive greater user engagement. We work with diverse clients to create beautiful digital experiences. I'm going to talk about the Australian War Memorial project that we did started in 2014. We co-produced the multimedia component and developed all the interactive screens for the 7 refurbished First World War galleries. The goal was to provide engaging, respectful, visitor-centric, multi-user experiences, a broader understanding of collection items on display, and access to collections items that would otherwise not be included. This would allow the visitor to engage with the objects in a more meaningful way and gain a deeper knowledge and appreciation of the First World War experience. There were several projects. I'm going to talk about a couple. The digital graphic signage, where we were replacing printed interpretive signs with interactive, multilingual, content-managed tablets. Audio, video, the reverse sides of photographs and postcards, multi-page documents like letters from the front, additional contextual images, audio in up to 5 languages based on visitor usage. Most of the printed material that is printed in the gallery is also provided on the tablets in its translated form. The second project I'd like to talk about is called Anzac from the Air, which provides a 3D multi-user experience on a large screen, 3 meters by 2 meters, that tries to explain the terrain that confronted the Anzacs when they landed in 1915. It uses material from biplanes from 1915 and 16 combined with satellite imagery from 2014. It's a high-res 2 meter res DEM file of 135 square kilometers of the Gallipoli Peninsula coast, focused around Anzac Cove. The photographs that are laid on top, taken in 1915 from a seaplane or a Sopwith tabloid, using a glass plate camera strapped onto the side of the plane. Pilot initially just leaning out the window taking pictures. Terrain played a critical role in shaping the course and outcome of the Gallipoli campaign. During the landings of the 25th of April, the rugged ground proved as great an obstacle as the Turkish defences. There are multi-user touch controls. This is a different interactive now. Graphic overlays providing statistics, lines of attack and lines of defence, points of interest that you can interrogate with a click, more images and videos, picture-in-picture panoramas, and personal single-user versions embedded in the larger screen. In Anzac from the Air, we were doing a number of things. We were fulfilling a number of functions for the collection. We were replacing this physical model that had seen better years, and one of the stories is that kids used to lean in and pick up, lone pine and move it, and then the neck and move it, which, now it's all content managed. The curators can do that themselves. They don't need kids to do it. We were to expose a world-class collection of early reconnaissance photographs taken by British pilots. Again, as I said, just notice this critical point just here. That's actually the important photograph in this whole collection. If anybody's got it, could they please give it back? Plain. Our approach took those high-resolution photographs and laid them on top of the 3D model, created from a stereo satellite by this person here. We built an interface to allow the users to explore location and terrain. So this is, I did the maths, I think it's slightly higher res or slightly lower res than the satellite photograph. Not too much difference. And the amazing photographs and videos from the period in the AWM collection, so exposing these things. So there's another view from a different angle, obviously. We followed user-centered design principles and ran many full-day content workshops where the wonderful curators at the AWM unfolded the First World War experience and unpacked their collection for us. We created a pair of user persona that formed the baseline for all user journeys throughout the interactive displays. Beryl and Bob. You know them. We all know them. For the large-scale interactives, we began with paper prototypes at 1:1, which showed us a few interesting things. It allowed us to understand the nature of the touchscreen, where most of the touchscreen was out of reach for most of the people at the gallery. So it drove all of the control into the lower third, the centre third. And the screen is made up of 9 42-inch screens, so there's a basic grid over the top of it, which you'll see in a minute. And as you can see, even Prince Harry came and helped us with the user interface design. The interactive design followed common patterns set out by touch devices and Google Earth, and the user interface needed to quote the technology of the early 20th century while avoiding our own latent steampunk tendencies. We also needed to reference the mapping and visualization aesthetic of the age. So one of the things that I found out a lot more about during this project was how data analysis and data visualization really happens at the end of the 19th century in a big way. And by the beginning of the 20th century, you've got a perfect storm of photography, reconnaissance from the air, and data. So these were very important tools to the campaign. Throughout the design conversation, we used actual imagery and representative UI in the wireframes, so that after a full design process and user experience testing and audience review, this is a later iteration. We ended up somewhere here, where we've gone through a year or so of designing, building, testing, and receiving feedback, and fixed some of the user interface issues that came up during the process. So the digital graphic signs, which I'll talk about as a lead-in to talking about how Drupal fits into this picture. There are 100 touchscreens, 100 tablets or more. There are 1,400 individual objects. So, and this is an object in the museum sense, which is something that is in the gallery, a physical object. Actually, come to think of it, we also have objects that don't exist in the museum, but there are 5,000 high-res images and videos across 7 galleries in 5 languages on 5 different displays at this smaller scale. We selected a webless Drupal 7 installation as it was a good fit for the project in many aspects, as you all know, with the Contrib suite in Drupal 7, making it a very powerful and pluggable system where we don't have to build everything from scratch. And it was also a product that was already in use at the organisation, so there was some familiarity and trust that was already built up there. I'll just quickly talk about the data model. So at the core is this museum object, which, as I mentioned, is not always an object, but almost always it's an object. It's a thing that you can look at in the case. So we created a single content type, a single node for each object in the collection. Each object could contain multiple media items. There were audio, video, and images, and also special kinds of images, turntable rotating objects, flippable images, and multi-page images. That media, because we were using the media module, can be reshared across different objects. So if a single, well, let's talk about display. So a display represents a physical tablet in the gallery and can contain multiple objects. And so you can reuse the same media item in multiple objects, and if it's in the same display, it only downloads once. And objects can also be shared between displays. In the museum, in the memorial, there are cases that are very large, and although we want to represent the contents of the entire showcase, we need more than one place for a user to look at it. So instead of forcing people to do a lot of duplication, you can just simply add the same objects to the other display. We needed them to be different displays, so different displays on different tablets, so we could tell which display was running on which device for logging and tracking and things like that. Also, sometimes they're slightly different. So I'll just go into a few things, into a few of the patterns that we used that made Drupal incredibly powerful in this case. So the memorial provided to us a couple of core content lists in the form of spreadsheets. One that was from a curatorial point of view, which talked specifically about the collection, and one that was from the multimedia design team, which was specific to the technology in the galleries. And although they both listed a location for where something was, they used different terms for that same location. And so we weren't able to automatically marry those things up, but what we were able to do is bring everything into the system using several different feeds. And then we used views bulk operations to allow people to easily select all of the objects from this location and assign it to this tablet, or easily filter out the objects, get the humans doing what they do well, which apparently isn't English. Sorry about that. My mum would not be happy. Images and video, so we used the media module as I mentioned. Images and video were provided in several batches, starting with placeholders and phone snaps, later high-resolution scans, and then finally rephotographed and retouched objects that didn't pass first muster. A combination of feeds and a custom build of media bulk importer allowed us to automatically match files back to their original objects by their file name and no other metadata. We were working with the memorial's internal processes so that they would mark things with the accession number, and we had the accession number from the spreadsheet, and we were able to join them all together. We also used views to create reports for things that couldn't be matched properly, so that people had a worksheet of things that they could go through and quality control, things that we knew weren't right, based on the logic of the system. We used views data export. So what I've skipped over there is in the next slide. We used Drupal in a headless fashion, so that all of the tablets weren't looking at a website, they were running a native app, and we were providing JSON and HTML files and image files and video files to the tablet. So we were using views data export, not services module in this case, to do that, because we needed a single JSON file that could describe the entire display in one go, which in some of the larger displays might have included 1,000 or more images. We used open frameworks to build all of the front ends, all of the apps running on all of the different interactives. Open frameworks is a C++ derived graphics development framework that runs across all 5 platforms. So we were able to see some code reuse between Android, which was running on all the tablets, and Windows, which was running on all the large touch interactives. As I mentioned, the Windows machines driving the Anzac from the air, it was running across 3 different computers, and each computer was running 3 screens with these high-performance architectural graphics cards, and synchronizing all of its content and all of its gestures and the position of the landscape over the network. We built lightweight tools for the content editors to move content through various stages of completeness and approval. It wasn't intended to restrict the deployment of content. It was actually designed so that people could write lists, worksheets, again, for the various different departments. It became clear that we didn't need a really controlled approval mechanism that would restrict content from going into the galleries. What we needed was tools that people could easily use to find things that needed to be done. Translations or emailing recalcitrant senior editors when they weren't doing their job and things like that. We made great use of views to detect and report issues, as I mentioned. For example, displays always have to have objects, so a display without an object is broken, so give me a list of that. Tablets without translations or ribbon displays without representative images are also broken and need fixing. All the content is managed in Drupal and downloaded to the app. The apps are designed to be resistant to the vagaries of the network and will run offline forever if needed. Once they've got their content, they will check for updates. If they can't connect to the network or there aren't any updates, they will continue with what they've got. So it's all running locally and offline. The smaller interactives provide up to 5 languages in the interface. Normally there's just 1 or 2 or 3, but there are 5 different languages that can be used in the gallery. The languages are based on audience numbers and also regions of conflict. So in the Gallipoli galleries you can switch to Turkish, and in the Western Front you can switch to French. One of the requirements of the project were that it run on, or that the CMS and the apps and the tablets all run on the internal network with no access to the internet. So we weren't able to use any regular app deployment technologies. So what we did is we rebuilt a lightweight app deployment system inside Drupal. So there's a content type that is an Android app, and you can upload a new app to Drupal, give it a version and a target device type now, and it will be downloaded the next time the tablet checks. It checks regularly. So we can send updates to the main display app, but we can also deploy new functionality apps if we needed to do some utility tasks in the background, for example, which we do. Again, it's providing JSON to the device. So there are a few challenges. I mentioned that we needed to operate inside the museum infrastructure. We did have a few initial problems with running on Windows around performance. There's a huge amount of resources now dedicated to the production machine, but it still has trouble because we were encouraging the multimedia team to provide high-res images so that we could future-proof against higher-res screens and tablets with more memory. But Windows is just having trouble processing those really large images a lot of the time. It's better, but there are some slowdowns. We have put some workarounds in place. The other thing, related to this as well, Windows was also having memory issues. The high polygon counts in the models meant that we needed to be careful with our memory usage on the large screen. Even though they're totally decked out machines, we're hitting the limit. The 2 meter resolution over 165 kilometers with super high res images on top, and then we're playing not only the large version, but we're playing 3 personal versions as well, all at the same time. Meant that we were running into some headroom issues, and we wanted the thing running at 60 frames a second because, you know, we're all gamers. And so 59.7, it's all right. So we ran into some issues there. We were able to work around it with modern versions of OpenGL and game development techniques. We fade out, we reduce the detail as it goes away, level of detail style. There's also an issue with the tablets, not with the tablets themselves, but they have a limited amount of memory, just like your telephone, which limited our ability to zoom into images. So we could go so far. We wanted to go further, but it means we run out of memory on the tablets. So we had to pull back a little bit. So just quickly, if I've got time, I was just thinking about what I would like to do when we get to do it again. Drupal 8, of course, that'd be cool. Automated front-end testing. We did a lot of the front-end testing by hand, and it's an obvious candidate for automating. It cost us a lot of time to do by hand, whereas the machine is perfectly suited for that. Push notifications, at the moment the tablets are polling for updates on a very regular basis, and that just seems a little bit last century to me. More logging. I'd like to be logging much more information about what's going on. And the other thing that we should have realized earlier on is that we really needed to replicate the environment, the 3x3 environment on site in our development environment, rather than trying to imagine it and then going and working on site. So this was a really successful interaction with the memorial and their audience, we think. We knew it was going to be popular with the younger people, but what it also allows for is intergenerational play. For example, having younger generations help their elders explore interactive content, while grandparents relay stories to their parents and their children and grandchildren. People really love it. The memorial's the nation's most visited museum. It's number 2 on TripAdvisor for the whole country. I'd encourage you to go and see it. It's just down the road. Thank you very much.